How y'all doing? I'm the Watchman, and this video right here, this video is entitled Pope Francis, the Jesuit, enemy of Christianity and true Protestantism. See, I realized, I was thinking, and the Holy Spirit told me, especially after one of my conversations with somebody, a friend who came on the page, and it was actually talking good about the Jesuits. One of the main problems we find ourselves where we're at today is because of a lack of knowledge in history about what a Jesuit is. And I realized this, and I should have been did a series on Jesuits. So this is going to kick off a whole series on Jesuits and what is a Jesuit. Because I realized when the Pope got elected Pope, or as you could say, and Obama held him up at the United Nations as the spiritual leader of all Christianity, and only a handful of people on the net, of course, was like, what? And was blown away. I realized many people don't know what a Jesuit is at all, So in this video right here, to kick off this series on Jesuitism, I'm just going to read some quotes from like Abraham Lincoln, John Quincy Adams, Napoleon. I'm going to let men of renown, men in the past, tell you what a Jesuit is. Because, I could tell somebody all day and they're like, that's just that Adventist talking. You know how you Seventh-day Adventists are. That ain't what a Jesuit is. Pope Francis is laid back. He kissed little boys' feet in the hospitals and in jails. Went to juvenile homes kissing little boys' feet. And, he rode the bus and he lives in a one-bedroom apartment, Beloved, be not deceived. This is all a part of what makes a Jesuit. And remember, every quote that I'm going to read to you was from the 1800s about what a Jesuit is. I'm going to give you a little rundown. Myself. Okay, I got to keep looking at the stopwatch because since the internet went on this, got handed over to this new government site or whatever, I got put on restriction till September. I can only do 15-minute videos. Okay, get on with it, Josh. Anyway, like I was saying, all these quotes that I'm about to read to you is from the 1800s. And you can Google. That's all I did right before I recorded this, was just I Googled these posts, and I'm going to give you the names and the quotes when I read them. But anyway, Jesuits, during the not 1800s, but during the Reformation. If any of you don't know what the Reformation is, that is the so-called Dark Ages, what we was taught in high school and in school. Now, the Dark Ages was that period from like 1300s all the way up to the 1800s, over in Europe. And we're talking about when the Catholic Church had control of Europe and what was then the known world. Not only Europe, but key points in Africa, Turkey, Syria, Asia Minor, all of that. The Catholic Church was running all of that. And if you opposed them, if you didn't believe what they believed, you was killed. So came the Protestant. The word Protestant actually means to protest Rome. That's where the word Protestant. And that's why Tony Palmer in this latest video with Pope Francis said there's no more Protestants, because many denominations in Christianity aren't protesting. And I gotta agree, many of them aren't protesting. But anyway, so this is when the Protestant came about. But one of the clever things that they did in the video was have people believe, because they know people don't know their history, was have people believe that the Protestant Reformation began with Martin Luther. Beloved, the Protestant Reformation began years before Martin Luther. Google what a Waldense is or what a Huguenot is, and you'll find out easily that the Protestant Reformation began way before Martin Luther. But that is not what this video is about, and I got to stay on point because time is limited. It's about a Jesuit. The Catholic Church, through Ignatius Loyola came up with this fraternity. It's like a fraternity, a sect called the Society of Jesus to wipe out Protestantism. If you were a Protestant, the Jesuits was created to stamp out Protestants, period, point blank. That was why it was created by any means. They had an oath. They had of course they got the Jesuit oath, and I'm going to read this in a later video, but they actually had a meaning called the end justifies the means. Meaning, no matter, this is their goal, and no matter what they want to do, no matter what they have to do to reach that goal, they're going to do it. They infiltrate all religions, even Seventh-day Adventists. We've been infiltrated hard. Go back through my videos. I've done videos on it, but I won't leave the church. It's the truth. But anyway, we've been infiltrated hard, and they infiltrate. They get high up in the ranks to take, and then they start making certain laws to take everybody back to Rome. That is their goal, to stamp out Protestantism and to take your worship, your praise back to Rome. Back to Rome. I mean, one of the key evidences that this is, and actually Tony Palm actually touched on this, was the Lutherans. Now, when the Lutherans in the late 1900s, in the late 1990s, or I believe it was the early 2000s, when the Lutherans apologized to the Catholic Church for what Martin Luther said about them being the beast and the Antichrist system, that's how you know Jesuits infiltrated the ranks, got into people's heads inside the Lutheran organization, and they diverted the Lutheran organization back to Rome. That is what they've been doing. I remember hearing a quote from Fidel Castro said, "Behind every war has been a Jesuit." Beloved, this is not a game. This is not a game. But that's what they do. They infiltrate, get high up in the rankings, and they'll make certain laws and statutes to bring all your praise back to Rome, back to Rome. But let's read. Let's see what some famous men had to say. Let's see what some famous men had to say. Look, I done took up another time already, so I'm going to have to, even reading these quotes, I'm going to make a part 2, simple and plain. Anyway, he says, this one quote says, it is my opinion that if the liberties of, now why did I touch the needle? It is my opinion that if the liberties of this country, the United States of America, are destroyed, it will be by the subtlety of the Roman Catholic Jesuit priests, for they are the most crafty, dangerous enemies to civil and religious liberty. They have instigated most of the wars of Europe. And that was a quote by Marquis de Lafayette. He lived 1757 to 1834. He was a French statesman and general. He served in the American Continental Army under the command of General George Washington. I'll sit down. My daughter just woke up, so excuse me real quick. Sweetheart, it's recording. You gotta sit down. All the noise you make is recording. Alright. I'm gonna read that quote again. It is my opinion that if the liberties of this country, the United States of America, are destroyed, it will be by the subtlety of the Roman Catholic Jesuit priests, for they are the most crafty, dangerous enemies to civil and religious liberty. They have instigated most of the wars of Europe. Again, that is a quote by Marquis de Lafayette, French statesman and general. Look at this quote. He says, my history of the Jesuits is not eloquently written, but it is supported by unquestionable authorities, and is very particular and very horrible. There, the Jesuit restoration in 1844 by Pope Pius VII is indeed a step towards darkness, cruelty, despotism, and death. I do not like the appearance of the Jesuits. If ever there was a body of men who merited eternal damnation on earth and in hell, it is this society of Ignatius de Loyola. And that is from John Adams, 2nd President of the United States. Let's see what some other people got to say. Between 1555 and 1931, the Society of Jesus, the Jesuit order, was expelled from at least 83 countries, city-states, and cities for engaging in political intrigue and subversion plots against the welfare of the state, according to the records of a Jesuit priest of repute, Thomas J. Campbell. Practically every instance of expulsion was for political intrigue, political infiltration, political subversion, and inciting to political insurrection. And that is a quote from J.E.C. Shepherd, a Canadian historian. Matter of fact, I think that's the only one that was in the 1900s. That quote was actually from in the 1900s. Here's a quote from Abraham Lincoln. This war, talking about the American Civil War, would never have been possible without the sinister influence of the Jesuits. We owe it to popery that we now see our land reddened with blood of our noblest sons. Though there were great differences of opinion between South and North of the question of slavery, neither Jeff Davis, President of the Confederacy, nor anyone of the leading men of the Confederacy would have dared to attack the North had they not relied on the promises of the Jesuits that under the mask of democracy, the money and arms of the Roman Catholic, even the arms of France, were at their disposal if they would attack us. I pity the priests, the bishops, and monks of Rome in the United States when the people realize that they are, in great part, responsible for the tears and the bloodshed in this war. I conceal what I know on that subject from the knowledge of the nation, for if the people knew the whole truth, this war would turn into a religious war, and it would at once take a tenfold more savage and bloody character. It would become merciless, as all religious wars are. It would become a war of extermination on both sides. Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States. Beloved, now do you see why he was shot and killed? The Jesuits are a secret society, a sort of Masonic order with super added features of revolting odiousness and 1,000 times more dangerous. Samuel Morse, 1791 to 1872, American inventor of the telegraph. And I'm going to have to look up that word odiousness. Odiousness. He says, with super added features of revolting odiousness and 1,000 times more dangerous. I'm thinking he mean like more camouflage, secretive, unknown, like camouflage chameleons. And that quote can actually be found in the book Foreign Conspiracy Against the Liberties of the United States. The inventor of the telegraph wrote a book specifically aimed at Jesuitism. I gotta hurry up. The Jesuits are a military organization, not a religious order. Their chief is a general of an army, not the mere father abbot of a monastery. And the aim of their organization is power. Power in its most despotic exercise. Absolute power. Universal power. Power to control the world by the volition of a single man, i.e. the Black Pope, the superior general of the Jesuits. Jesuitism is the most absolute of despotisms, and at the same time the greatest and most enormous of abuses.